There's a lot of really good teams in college basketball right now, but I think there's a great case to be made that the Kentucky Wildcats are currently the best in the nation.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to be making the case for Kentucky basketball as to why they are the best team in the nation. Obviously, a lot of really, really good teams right now in college basketball that have been flexing their muscles against some really good opponents, some of which Kentucky's going to play pretty soon, actually. But I'm going to explain why I believe right now Kentucky is the best team in the country. Also, going to be taking a look at bracketology. Thanks, Joe Lenardi, for finally giving Kentucky some respect. And then I want to look up the road based off of a comment that Mark Pope made in the post-game press conference against Lipscomb. 39% is a really big number for Kentucky, and I want to kind of look at what that might mean for some of the bigger non-con games here in just a few weeks. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel because new customers can place a $5 bet and get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. If you're watching on YouTube or the podcast feed, wherever you are tuned in, thank you so much for watching, and I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to the show. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. So here are the reasons. Right now, let's make the case that Kentucky basketball is currently the best team in the country. I think that Kentucky today, Wednesday, November 20th, Kentucky has the best win in the country. And that is against number 4 Duke on KenPom, the 77-72 win at a neutral site. The Wildcats showed a lot of different strengths in that game, and they showed the ability, I think the biggest thing to me as far as strengths goes, they showed the ability to be coachable and adjust. Something that Kentucky's teams of the past have kind of struggled with at times. They've struggled with adjustments when it comes to X's and O's from a coaching standpoint, and they've shown an inability to actually implement the game plan even whenever Kentucky has something that they may want to execute. And I'm not just blanket statement saying that all the players of the last decade weren't able to actually do that. I'm just saying there were times in crucial moments where Kentucky would not execute against non-conference opponents like Duke. And you got to see in this game Mark Pope read things very well towards the end of the game. You were able to see Kentucky and their players, multiple players, step up in big-time moments, make big-time shots, make huge defensive plays against one of, if not the most talented team in college basketball. And I know you guys, as Kentucky fans, you may hear me say that, and you kind of roll your eyes at it a little bit, just as far as talent goes. You know, how far does talent actually get you? You and I know that conversation very well. But it is the most talented team in college basketball in terms of athleticism, height, of NBA ability. I mean, these guys that Duke had on their roster are simply next level. The win against Duke is the best win in the country. I know that Auburn has already beaten Houston. I frankly do not think Houston is a better team than Duke. For a variety of reasons, if both of those teams matched up, I think the Blue Devils are the better team. This is a huge statement for what Kentucky basketball can be this upcoming season. But if we're just talking right now, I think that it's pretty clear the Wildcats have the best win. Also, if you want to look at what Kentucky has done in their other games, and we talked about this whenever I did an episode recently about why, here are the reasons why Kentucky could win the national championship. We're going to refrain on some of those here briefly. In these other games, Wright State, Bucknell, Lipscomb, Kentucky has shown balance on both ends of the floor, and they've done a lot of things really well. They haven't necessarily struggled in any sort of category outside of creating opponent turnovers. That's really it. Elsewhere, they are sound across the board. And when you go and just look at the box scores, 103-62 against Wright State, 100-72 against Bucknell, 97-68 against Lipscomb. These are blowouts where Kentucky is scoring a lot of points and they're holding their opponent defensively. Now I know Bucknell 72, Lipscomb 68. If you want to go watch those recap episodes, you absolutely can to see why I explain very well why those two teams were able to get to 72 and 68. It's because the final 5 minutes of the game, everybody was kind of checked out. Even Mark Pope said something about that in his press conference against Lipscomb about how there were things defensively that Kentucky did in the first half that they were essentially begging Lipscomb to take advantage of in the second, late, obviously. But this team, when they play at their best, which they've shown already, they score in bunches, they play sound defense, they do a really good job rebounding the ball, which is something that I think is very underrated when you talk about the importance of big-time games and, like, what you do in them. They've shown the ability to rebound the ball. And we're going to talk about this looking ahead, kind of maybe what some concerns might be for UK and kind of just be aware of some things. It's not going to be, this is going to suck for Kentucky. I actually want to give both sides of the argument here later on in the show. But it's very clear. You have the best win. You have a very balanced team statistically, and just as far as eye test goes, they do a little bit of everything very well. In your other games against lesser competition, you have done everything you need to do to impress. You're one of the tallest teams in the country, top 20 there. Physically, you pass all eye tests. Your roster is incredibly balanced. You have big men doing things that guards can do. You have guards doing things that big men can do, as far as just things in offensive sets, etc. I am so impressed with how the season has started, and I really do hope that the SEC slate is, obviously it's going to be a gauntlet, but I hope Kentucky is able to fight their way through it and show with a strong resume, meaning I just hope Kentucky wins. I hope they're able to show with a strong resume at the end of the season that they are what these first four games say they are, which is arguably the best team in college basketball. And I think some national pundits are starting to appreciate what Kentucky is and respect kind of what they have been so far. Now, obviously, everything is subject to change. Anything can happen. But right now, Kentucky is on fire. And Joe Lenardi of ESPN giving Kentucky some love in an interesting bracketology. Obviously, we're so far away from bracketology, but I just want to talk about just kind of where Kentucky's at seed line-wise. Before we do that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Mint Mobile. I love a great deal as much as the next guy, but I'm not going to crawl through a bed of hot coals to save a few bucks. It's got to be easy, no hoops, no BS. Mint Mobile said it was easy to get a wireless plan for $15 a month with a purchase of a 3-month plan. I called them on it, and it turns out it really is that easy to get a plan for $15 a month. The longest part of the process was the time I spent on hold waiting to break up with my old provider. It was super, super easy. All you got to do to get started is to go to mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. Then you'll see there right now, all 3-month plans are only $15 a month, including the unlimited plan. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan. Bring your phone number along with all of your existing contacts. You can find out how easy it is to switch to Mint Mobile and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. That is mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. You can cut your wireless bill to $15 a month with mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. Disclaimer, $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. All right, continuing along on the Wednesday edition of Locked On Kentucky, Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. Really appreciate you guys checking out the show today. If you would like to subscribe to the YouTube channel or the podcast feed, I would greatly appreciate it if you did so. Sorry, this episode's getting out a little bit later if you're watching this tonight on the YouTube feed. Apologies for that. Some different illness things that I'm just trying to work through, but we're all good. We're chilling. Talking here about Kentucky basketball, why they might be the best team in college basketball. Now we're going to take a look at some bracketology respect from Joe Lunardi. First of all, thank you, Joe, for updating your bracketology now that Kentucky has beaten Duke. He updated this just yesterday at 11:15 in the morning, and this is what he had to say. I'm going to read the paragraph. Normally, he has a paragraph at the top, kind of updating the top overall seed, first team out, last team in, what's kind of happened with this new update, and then he'll show the teams on the bubble, the last 4 buys, last 4 in, first 4 out, next 4 out. This is what he had to say. I might not always agree, but there's a reason the NCAA Men's Basketball Selection Committee insists November results mean just as much as late season games. That's why we're talking about this today, by the way. Let's go back a week to the final media timeout of the Champions Classic. Kentucky had come down back from double digits down to tie Duke. The underdog Wildcats managed to win those last 4 minutes, not only notching the first major victory of the Mark Pope era, but creating the kind of bracket disruption not normally seen this early in the season. Combined with Alabama's unsurprising loss at Purdue, the door opened for 2 new number 1 seeds, Auburn and UConn. Former top liner Duke drops all the way to a 3 seed in the shuffle, while Kentucky leaps 3 lines to join the Blue Devils. This week's other big winners are Wisconsin, which smoked Arizona at home, and Nevada, which ran its record to 4-0 against a quality mid-major slate. The Badgers and Wolfpack joined the at-large field in place of Kansas State and Maryland. So you heard it there. Kentucky jumping from a 6 seed before their game against Duke all the way up to a 3 seed. Wildcats in the Midwest region, alongside notable teams Kansas as the number 1 seed and Purdue as a 2. Your 4 seed is Creighton. Your 5 is Texas A&M. 6 seed is Illinois. Now on the 6 seed line are Illinois, Arkansas, Florida, and Indiana. Your 2 seeds, Purdue, Tennessee, Iowa State, and Alabama. Your 1 seeds, Kansas, Gonzaga, UConn, and Auburn. So what does this mean? In essence, it means that right now, Kentucky is somewhere between the 13th best team in the country and the 16th best team in the country, according to ESPN's bracketology. And I think that if you went to the bracket matrix and you looked at the other bracketologies that have updated their stuff, you're going to see that's a pretty consistent theme. Kentucky is somewhere between the 13th best and the 16th best team. They're 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th on that 3 seed line, possibly all the way up to that 3 seed line if they get up to the 12 in instances like this. So, I guess that begs the question, then, how high can Kentucky actually climb if just 1 win against Duke was able to get them up to this 3 seed line? How high can they climb before they get out of non-conference play? Because right now, Kentucky has 4 really big games that would be, I think 3 of them would be considered quad 1. 1 of them would be considered quad 2, depending on what Louisville does. But for Lunardi to say, yeah, essentially they're number 12, and for a lot of other places to say, yeah, they could be 12, but they're usually 13th, 16, they're making their way up. They went from that 6 seed line, which was just a ridiculous place, I think, to have had Kentucky jumping so high. And here you are now with Clemson, Gonzaga, Ohio State as legitimate chances. I think Kentucky has a legitimate chance to push to the top of that 3 seed line, which would essentially mean they were the 9th best team in the country, or possibly break through to that 2 seed line before conference play starts. And you may say, well, what does it matter where we are in bracketology in December? I only care about what's going to happen in March, and you're right. But my point here is, if you're that high, starting conference play as Kentucky, that signifies one simple thing: you've got a very strong resume out the gate. That's something that Kentucky has struggled to obtain over these past several years. A win against Duke, if you could go and beat Clemson, if you could somehow beat Gonzaga in Seattle, if you could somehow pull that off and beat Ohio State at a neutral site, if you're somehow undefeated having beaten Gonzaga and Duke, which, by the way, Gonzaga, the number one team in the nation on KenPom, that is going to be very difficult for Kentucky to do. But if you can do that, it's like 4 quad 1 wins there, possibly. Like 5 already. That is great out the gate, especially with what this SEC slate's going to provide. It's going to provide you a ton of opportunities to go on the road and beat some teams that are middle of the conference, but a quad 1 victory and a strong victory at that. So thanks, Joe Lenardi, for updating, letting everybody know, hey, the Cats are in a really good spot right now. Let's hope it holds. Because looking up the road, things have a chance to be really, really good. They also have a chance to be rough, which is what I want to talk about in relation to something that Mark Pope said in his press conference against Lipscomb. Before we dive into that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Skylight Frames. Are you missing someone this holiday season and want them to be a part of your festivities from afar? Maybe gift giving isn't your love language. You overthink it and wind up with something disappointing or nothing at all. And if you come from a big family, it can be hard and expensive to buy each one a personal gift for the holidays. Well, we've got the perfect gift for you if you want to get closer to your family and you are kind of iffy on what you want to do as far as gift giving goes. Skylight Frames is the perfect solution for you. It's the touchscreen digital photo frame your whole family will love. You can upload thousands of photos with your phone and watch them appear in seconds. It's super easy to use. Setup takes less than 60 seconds. My family, this is not a bit, my family has one at their house, and we have used this for about a year now, and it is amazing. It's also hilarious to see some really embarrassing photos pop up from time to time. It takes less than 60 seconds to put together. Seamless sharing. You can invite friends and family to easily share photos via the free Skylight mobile app or email. There is no account or subscription required. You can just, boom, put in photos. If you want your grandparents to put in photos, it's super easy for them to access and make that happen. Add new photos straight from your phone or from anywhere. It only takes a tap on your phone to send new photos to a frame across the country. It's the fastest, easiest way to keep loved ones in the loop. They'll feel so much more connected to you. The touchscreen is a game changer. They've also got gift mode, makes it a very, very meaningful, personalized gift. You can preload it with memories without opening the box. It's super, super awesome. Satisfaction guaranteed. We are confident that you'll love Skylight. I love mine here at my parents' house. We offer free 120-day returns, top-rated brand. Here, over 1 million happy customers, myself included, thousands of 5-star reviews, and it's available in over 30 countries. It's recommended by the Today Show, Forbes, New York Magazine, and more. And now, as a special limited time offer for our listeners, you can get $20 off your purchase of a Skylight frame when you go to skylightframe.com/lockedoncollege. That's skylightframe.com/lockedoncollege to get $20 off your purchase now at skylightframe.com/college. Today's episode also brought to you by FanDuel. Tackle NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if they win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL. It's all in one place, so when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, a few live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, wrapping up the Wednesday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. So, talked about why Kentucky could be the best team in the college basketball right now. We appreciate the respect in terms of bracketology projections, but let's look up the road. Because there's a chance not everything is sunshine and roses for Kentucky basketball. And I think a lot of it has to do with Kentucky's paint defense. That's right. What Kentucky does at the rim on the defensive end of the floor. Mark Pope talked about this in his press conference. He said for Kentucky basketball, the magic number for their defense was 39. 39% to hold teams under that number, not from 2, from the floor. In order to continue to do that, because Kentucky has managed to hold teams to 39% or lower in all 4 of these games that they played so far this season. Every single opponent, Wright State, Bucknell, Duke, and Lipscomb. All teams have shot 39% or worse from the floor. If you're going to continue to do that, for me, it's playing better defense in the paint. And we're about to dive into some numbers here, so let's get comfortable. And I hope this what I'm about to break down here is not like gloom and doom, because I'm going to give you both sides of this. You guys remember how the first half against Duke went. Kentucky made adjustments. They won the game. Great. Duke also missed some open shots, which is a major talking point for Duke fans on Twitter right now. Womp womp is all I have to say. Kentucky missed a bunch of wide open shots too. Jackson Robinson scored 1 point. Get over it. But opponents are shooting 48.8% from Kentucky in the paint. That's 134th nationally. That first half against Duke is a reflection of like the lows of what Kentucky can be in the paint, where you're just giving up shot after shot after shot after shot. To give you an idea of where 134th nationally ranks, 364 teams in Division I, so that means 121st or higher would be in the top third of D1 nationally. So Kentucky giving up 48.8%, it's like top 36, 37%. It's a lot of different random numbers there at you, but that's not terrible right now. But if you're looking at conference play, it's 14th out of 16th in the SEC. By the way, the 2 teams that are underneath Kentucky right now are Oklahoma and Arkansas. Anyway, by the way, Kentucky, one of the worst teams in all of the Power 5 last year, Power 6, in 2-point percentage, or at least in terms of like what opponents were doing against them inside the paint. Kentucky was 135 nationally in 2-point field goal percentage, and teams didn't get a ton of points from 2 relative to their 3-point status, but they were carving up Kentucky. You guys know, you saw it. Someone might say, listening to this, 48.8%, top 36% nationally, one of the worst marks in the SEC. You can't win a national title with that. And I thought the case was going to be true. That's what I was going to say here. It's like you cannot win a title with that. It turns out you can, and I was surprised. And it's not just, it's one team, it's multiple over the last few years that have won a national title doing this. Villanova's 2018 team, their opponent shot 49% from 2. Baylor's 2021 team allowed teams to shoot 48.7%. Just a hair underneath where Kentucky is right now from 2. Both those teams won a title. Now, you guys know how both of those teams won a national title. They had insanely, and I mean insanely, efficient offenses. Both were higher than where Kentucky is right now, and they both shot a blistering percentage from 3, although I will point out Kentucky is currently shooting better from 3 than both of those teams. So the 2-point defense is where I think Kentucky's season lies. They do a really good job of not allowing second chance points. Kentucky right now is top 35 nationally in that category. They hold teams from 3. Kentucky has almost a top 10 3-point defense. So it's what you do in the paint. Amari Williams and Brandon Garrison, and frankly, Kentucky's entire wing rotation are huge for the Wildcats and if they want to win a national championship. So let's look down the immediate road. 39% from the floor. I'm saying you need to improve on that 48.8% mark from 2, which, by the way, Kentucky's effective field goal percentage right now is 43. If they got the effective field goal percentage down to 39%, they would be in like the top 15 nationally in terms of defense, which at that point, if you were able to do that, yeah, this is absolutely a national championship contender. There's no arguing it, especially with the way they shoot from 3. But let's look down the immediate road, okay? How can we prepare mentally for how Kentucky may do in terms of what they do in the paint and in terms of what they do overall? Can they hold that 39% mark? Well, I just want to look here at these 4 major games left in the non-con slate: Clemson, Gonzaga, Louisville, and Ohio State. So brace yourself, because here we go. Clemson right now is top 40 in the nation in adjusted offensive efficiency. They shoot a decent clip from 3, almost 37%, and they shoot 54% from 2. That's an average number there. Or it's top third, but it's average for Kentucky's caliber of opponent. So it's an okay offense. It's a good offense, not a great offense. And they played some really bad teams. They played Charleston Southern, St. Francis, Eastern Kentucky, and then the one game that they played that against a good opponent, Boise State, they lost. And here's how those games went. And it's really interesting. Charleston Southern, they shot 47.7% from 2. That's not great. But Charleston Southern is also 249th in height. So against a really small team, they shot a low percentage. Against one of the smallest teams in the country, St. Francis, they shot 72.4%. Okay. So they absolutely destroyed them in the paint in that game. Against Eastern Kentucky, 58.3%. Okay. 220th in height is EKU. So they had a bad game against a small team and then 2 good games against small teams. So why is their overall 2-point percentage just 54? Well, they shot 44% against Boise State, who is 28th in height. So they went from playing a bunch of small teams to a strong Mountain West opponent, and they struggled. They got dominated in the paint against Boise State. Kentucky, again, I want to reiterate, just go back to this real quick, 17th nationally in average height. A lot of guys that are tall and physical. Garrison, Williams, Carr, all 6'10 or higher. Almanor, Brea, Robinson, 6'6", 6'7", with a little bit of muscle to them. You are going to have a chance to clamp down against Clemson, but you have to control the paint because Clemson's top 2 players in terms of usage and percentage of possessions used, shots taken, etc. And it's not like dominant in all of those categories. It's just when you look at all of them together. And then in terms of it is in terms of usage. But their top 2 players in terms of go-to guys are 6'11 and 6'8. They start 3 players that are 6'8, 6'10, and 6'11. It's their center and their power forward that do the dirty work for them and score points. Outside of Chase Hunter, who is just a beast and also plays well outside of shooting threes. So Kentucky, you're going to have a challenge, but it's doable against Clemson to do 39% overall and then be better than 48% from 2. It's possible. And I think you're going to need to do at least one of those things to win that game. Against Gonzaga, it's a little bit more tough. They currently have the best offense in the nation, according to KenPom. They shoot 58.8% from 2, decent clip from 3. They've already played 3 teams inside the top 60, according to KenPom, scored at least 80 points against all of them. All of that to say, they've already played good competition, and they whipped them. So they're legit. Their top 2 players in terms of usage are 6'9 and 6'10. Graham Ike, the Wyoming transfer at center in his second season with the Bulldogs, he's very good. They are going to go to him a ton, and Gonzaga underneath Mark Few, they have controlled the paint. When they have had really good seasons, they've dominated the paint. They've done it so far this year. There's not a whole lot I want to say about Gonzaga because it's just like that's going to be a tall task for Kentucky to do well defensively against them, even well just because of how they've manhandled every other opponent. Also, Mark Pope does not have a great record against Gonzaga. Just doesn't. Louisville, number 71 in the nation in adjusted offensive efficiency. Not great, not bad. They still shoot 58% from 2, which is really, it's good. It's not great, but it's good. And the only game that they played worth a rip against Tennessee, they got curb stomped. They shot 6 of 21 from 2. Yes, that's just 21 shots from 2. Tennessee was smothering them. Louisville heavily reliant on the outside shot, unlike Clemson and Gonzaga, who at least get half of their points from 2. But their top 2 players are 6'10 and 6'6 for the Cardinals. And both are shooting 60% or better from inside the arc. So, top two players, really good inside the paint. Louisville still shooting pretty decently inside the paint, despite not having the best offense and absolutely getting blown out by the only team that they play that's good on their schedule. But still, again, opportunity to do things well defensively. And there's sides to this. There's both positives and negatives. Like, well, you can play well defensively, but also they run some of their stuff through their big men. And then the final team, who doesn't really do a ton here in terms of 2-point stuff. Top 35 nationally in offense, shooting 38.5% from three, which is really good, 52.3% from 2-point. This is the worst 2-point offense we will talk about today. They're also very reliant on threes. They get only 44% of their points from two. This is a game Kentucky has to win while controlling the paint. Yes, Ohio State's going to get their shots up from three, but you cannot let guys get inside and finish at the rim. You also can't allow fouls to be a problem against Louisville, because Louisville gets a lot of points from the charity stripe. Ohio State could do that as well to you because of their guards and their ability to slash and finish. Michi Johnson, shout out. But yeah, you've got four different opponents that have done some good things, also could possibly have weaknesses. Just want to be aware of this, guys. If things fall apart for Kentucky over these next few games, major games before the SEC slate, I think a lot of it's going to have to do with what Kentucky does in the paint defensively. Can they hold some of these opponents? We're just going to have to see. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK. You can follow me on Twitter at @LanceDawe_, and follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and God bless.